Hello and welcome to Daily Politics, reaching you from Trust TV here in Abuja. On this program, we discuss issues around politics, policy, and governance. I am Suleiman. Tonight, we'll be looking at the recent coups in Africa, particularly in West Africa. Since August 2020, there have been 5 successful military coups in Africa, in Sudan, Mali, Chad, Guinea, and just the week before last in Burkina Faso. All of these are in addition to 2 coup attempts in Niger Republic and, of course, in one other African country. Now, Africa used to be the center, the epicenter of coups, particularly in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. Research has shown that about at least 4 coups used to happen in Africa during this period. However, by 2010 to 2019, that number trimmed down to about 2 coups every year. Unfortunately, in just the last 18 months, we have had 5 coups and 2 coup attempts. So today, we're asking on daily politics, are coups returning in Africa? What are the background to these coups? Is Africa, and what is the fate of over 150 million Africans who now live under military governments, particularly in West Africa? With me to discuss all this is Ambassador Mohammed Coups Ibrahim, a career diplomat, an author, and human rights advocate. Ambassador M.K. Ibrahim served in 6 countries, including as an ambassador to Libya during the government of Colonel Gaddafi. That, in fact, was his last post. Welcome to Daily Politics, sir.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. But before we continue, we'll just take a moment's break, and then we'll be right back. Stay with us.
The idea was to give the interim government confidence that there is somebody, a military man, who is well known, who can be accepted.
You alluded to the case of your son, Umar Farouk. Are you in touch with him?
Yes, he phones us 2 times, sometimes 3 times in a month.
As always, when I'm talking about late Abiola, I still thank my God for directing me on things to do when he gave me that leadership of this country.
Many of you honest Fulanis, you allow this man to cast aspersion on you.
Zamfara is the mother of all bandits.
The biggest problem, if you permit me, is the fact that we have not been able to get the totality of our citizenry.
It's very, very difficult to have a fixed mind like that this one you will hand over to this person because you think you will do better.
I don't see myself under no circumstance ever leaving APC for another political party.
Now, here on the Mambila Plateau, and this is where the hydroelectric power dam is supposed to be constructed.
Most people in Nigeria are ignorant of the fact that employing a child as a maid is in fact against the law.
Access to the textile mill has been very difficult.
I believe, or I think that if you want to make money, it should be in a place where there are not plenty of people that can do what you do.
From the way things are happening now, I don't think the 2 parties will make an impact.
I've been talking about the updates concerning the campaign of Nigerian Super Eagles in Abuja.
Bola Tinubu has informed President Muhammadu Buhari of his ambition to contest for the position of president.
To be self-reliant, a blind man defies all odds to become a carpenter in Gombe State.
The country is now experiencing a 4th wave of the COVID-19 pandemic with the emergence of the Omicron variant.
Talks are ongoing between NRC management and the union.
Welcome back. This is Daily Politics, and now we get into the discussion proper about the resurgence of coups in Africa. So, Your Excellency, sir, as someone who has seen, well, most of the previous ones and the coming ones now, we have had about 5 coups and 2 coup attempts in 18 months. In one country, that is Mali, you even had 2 coups in just 10 months. What does this say about, does it signify or does it signal the return of military in Africa or West Africa specifically?
Thank you very much. Anytime there is a setback in the democratization process in Africa, it's a matter of concern for us in Nigeria because we have gone through it, which led to a 3-year civil war with a loss of not less than almost 3 million people and catastrophic effect, on our economy and our position, in the world. So the recent events, the coups, are considered by Nigeria as a real setback, for us. There's never, in the last 30 years, there has never been a time that there was no coup at all, as you have said it yourself. The only thing is that between the year 2000 and now, the spate has really been halved to what it was, at earlier period. But if you look at the countries that you have just mentioned, these are countries that have gone through a very long period of political instability. All the countries that you have mentioned. If you start from Mali, for example, Mali and Guinea, historically, since their independence, these were countries that refused to sign the Pact for Continuation of Colonization of France. These are countries that refuse to follow the other 14 French countries, African countries that were colonized by France, to have their bank reserve in the French Central Bank. And for that, particularly Guinea, was punished severely. Their infrastructure was...
So how is that a contributing factor to this current spate of coups in these countries?
It means there has been continuous instability in this place. This instability, the military coups, before there are essentially three things. Poverty, mismanagement, and corruption. Now there is the fourth factor, which is insecurity. And if you look at all the African countries, especially in our sub-region here, the fourth factor, the factor of insecurity, is a very, very serious issue. I'm very happy to hear that the president, Muhammadu Buhari, has been quoted as saying that coup Nigeria has passed the stage of coup in her history. If you say prayer, I say amen, to that.
Okay.
But quite honestly, it's a matter of concern for us, not necessarily because of the fear that it might happen here, but for the fact that it's happening in other countries within our sub-region.
Exactly. But I was going to save that question for last.
Yeah.
That should we also be worried in Nigeria? But we'll get to that point. Maybe before then, maybe we can and look at, is there a kind of, some kind of effect, boomerang effect? That, okay, once there is because all of these countries also, other than Sudan, they also enable each other in one way or another.
Well, that's what you call the domino effect.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to remember. Thank you. So is there a domino effect in this process?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
The first coup in West Africa was in Togo, 1963.
Okay.
Immediately, Nigeria followed. Ghana followed. And others it just went round, like that. So that's the domino effect, of it. And we are afraid we don't want this to happen again because that is a big setback, for us. And I hope it doesn't happen. But as I said, the countries that you have mentioned, these are countries that have been going through serious stages of instability. So it's easy, for them, to have in a coup. The recent pandemic has affected the economy of many countries in the world.
Particularly in Africa.
Yeah, the unemployment, situation. And as I mentioned, the issue of insecurity. If you don't have a strong government, then there is a likelihood, of having coup. And that's what we are facing.
Thank you. So another thing that people can easily observe about this coup is in all the 7 countries, including Niger and Guinea-Bissau, where there was attempted coup last week, right? Other than Sudan,
it was Guinea-Bissau.
Guinea-Bissau, yes,
so Guinea-Bissau they attempted coup.
They attempted coup last, in addition to Guinea, where there was in fact a coup, right? So if you look at all these countries, other than Sudan, all of them have one thing in common: they are francophone countries. So is there, and given the fact that many francophone countries have, we have Cameroon nearby us here, Benin Republic. They're used to living with one leader in 30 years, in 40 years, and so on and so forth. We've seen that almost our entire neighbors are like that. Is there any specific role that, or is that common denominator between all these countries? Is that itself a factor to the return of these coups?
I think we can easily reach that kind of conclusion. But I think is not, I can't accept it as there is a link.
Okay.
As I said, most of the small, fragile countries in West Africa, coincidentally, were also Francophone countries. But on the other hand, we have Senegal, that had never had a history of military coup, and it's a French-speaking country also. So we should look at
it's one of the largest, in fact.
Yeah, we should look at the internal factors that are responsible for this coup, not necessarily because they are French-speaking, countries.
Okay. So talking about the internal factors, one thing that people have observed is that these coups tend to be supported, sometimes actively by the civilian population, even by the organized civil society and opposition political members of the opposition political class. This is not how coups used to be before in Africa. Why is that happening now? Is it that Africans are tired of democracy, or what's going on?
Well, a number of factors. Not that Africans are tired of democracy. Actually, in many African countries, we have never had real democracy.
Interesting.
What we have is a government, civilian government, not necessarily democracy. And that is really the fear. There are people who are in their 50s now who can recall very well what happened in almost 30 years of military regime in Nigeria. They will tell you probably at that time, because there was no insecurity as we have today, the economic situation was not as bad as we have it today. So they can easily reach that kind of conclusion that life was better. But I think that is an error to start thinking about that.
Okay.
There's a huge, progress made, after the democratic government that we have had. It's not easy. The problem with military regime is that anytime you have it, it's like postponing the evil day. You cannot continue under military regime. Anytime you come back to have a democratic government, you have to build all the democratic institutions, starting all over again. And that is not good for any country.
So is there a comment that even if, because you mentioned that there's been huge progress made, and it's precisely the reason why, or some people have said the reason why people are trooping to the streets to congratulate and even celebrate with the coup plotters, to welcome them to government. That, for example, in Guinea, for example, you had this idea of attempt to elongate the constitution.
Yeah. In
Mali, you had this situation with the parliamentary elections, which resulted into a stalemate that no one could get out of. Even in Burkina Faso, people were expressly celebrating the coup plotters, or indicating that there is some major frustration with democratic governance in the region.
Mm-hmm. I think there are two things.
Okay.
One is in human nature.
Okay.
When you think there's a change that is going to bring positive changes, I put positive changes in inverted commas, you tend to grab it. It may not be that. There may not be this positive change, but as human beings, you always think that tomorrow will be better. So they go for that. The second thing, like in the case of Mali,
yes,
people came out and they are protesting. They are protesting not because they are supporting the military per se, but they believe that the sanctions of ECOWAS was too severe, that is punishing them rather than punishing the military. And it's not only in Mali, all the neighboring countries, while their government were against the coup, the citizens of those countries, especially businessmen, they realized the effect of the sanction against them. They trade with Mali, they visit Mali, they have all, and then all of a sudden this sanction effect is to stop all this. So for their business, it's a big loss, and they are not happy. So the protest that we have seen in all the major cities in Mali is not necessarily because they are supporting the government, but they realize the implication, of the sanction is just too severe, for them to
and the ordinary citizens themselves.
Yes.
Thank you. So that takes us straight to the ECOWAS sanctions. The Malian government itself is saying that the sanctions are being premeditated by external powers, particularly France, that it is France that is hamstringing or that's putting pressure on ECOWAS to, in fact, slam those sanctions on Mali. That the sanctions are not even in the ECOWAS Charter. What can you say about this?
No, it's not in Mali that we started sanctions.
Okay.
This has been imposed on all countries that have unconstitutional change of government. It did not start with Mali.
Okay.
So that is not really an excuse.
Okay.
But I think many people, including the ECOWAS, have realized that these sanctions probably have to be modified a bit. They have to be targeted sanctions. Also to give the new government the opportunity to sit down and discuss with the ECOWAS.
Thank you. So what about some of the claims that, okay, part of the reasons why we're having this coups is because we're having a return to the Cold War era, that you're now having a multiplicity of international powers that are playing politics in Africa, particularly in these Francophone countries. You have China, you have Russia, in addition to the traditional French government or France that they had to deal with. That the conflicts that this brings about is what is also causing this new epidemic of coups, as the UN Secretary General described it.
No, I don't think that is really an excuse. Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Senegal, they have all had, in the last 30 years, made new friends. They have developed their trade with other countries. China is now a major friend and competitor with other countries in the world who are our traditional partners. That has not led to a coup here. But we have to look at case by case. You know, the case of Mali is completely different. You know, now the whole of northern Mali is not in the hands of the government. Now it has led, you know, to a demand for secession.
By the jihadists?
Yes, the jihadists, you know, group, they are the Tuaregs, you know, group, you know, that they want a different country. And the Malian government tend to believe that the French were supporting, you know, the division of Mali into two countries. And that's really their major concern. You mentioned international factors. The Russians are now Russian soldiers in Mali. You know, the Wagner or Wagner correctly, Wagner correctly,
Yes.
you know, who have been invited, you know, by the Malian government. Of course, not only France, but the whole of EU, including the United States, is not happy seeing the Russian soldiers, you know, there. So if that will bring peace in that country, let's treat it as the internal matter of Mali and see what happens in other countries with similar problems.
Thank you. I spoke on these issues with the Malian foreign minister, Dr. Abdoulaye Diop, and he was saying that even if Mali wants to move closer to Russia, you know, that's Mali's own internal affairs, that that's not part of the business of ECOWAS to feel anything about
I don't think this is a concern that ECOWAS has expressed anywhere. These are essentially internal affairs of Mali. There is no evidence that the Russian Wagner group, their presence in Mali has any negative effect on other ECOWAS countries. No. What the ECOWAS is worried about is that, you know, there shouldn't be unconstitutional change of government, either in Mali or in any of the member states.
Thank you. So beyond this, like you said, each individual country has different situations. You know, in some cases there are some issues that are common. In other cases, there are issues that are different. What about neighboring Chad here? You know, because we have a border with Chad, you know, in the northeast, but also, even though Chad is not necessarily in West Africa, what are the situation there? And should we say that the current government appears to have stabilized?
I think it's too early to make this kind of statement. We're expecting that there will be election in that country, and we hope the election will be free and fair and acceptable by the people of Chad. You know, but even the initial problem, Idris Deby had been in power for over 30 years, and now his son has taken over. Direct succession from, you know, father to son. There are just a few cases in Africa, and this has to be managed carefully. ECOWAS is not trying to encourage, you know, that even though Chad is not in ECOWAS, Chad is in Central Africa, but it's too close, you know, to Nigeria.
To West Africa.
Chad is a member of the multinational task force. You know, we have a lot in common with Chad, and Nigeria would not be happy, you know, to see any conflict in addition to what we're already managing in Chad.
Thank you. What about Sudan, far off from there? How does it, you know, feature in this coup equation on the African continent? Is it an anomaly, or is it part of the same story, even if it is in the Maghreb?
Yeah, it's almost the same thing. Bashar has been in power also for a very long period, over 20 years, you know, in that place. And that has its own effect also. There have not been free and fair election in that place. And the coup taking place was not really surprising, because there had been a lot of, you know, attempted coups. But just like Chad, Sudan is also a country that is close to Nigeria in terms of the number of Nigerians. We have not less than 5 million people who can trace their descent
Nigerians?
To Nigeria.
In Sudan?
Yeah.
That's
These are Sudanese of Nigerian descent.
Interesting.
Not less than 5 million. But then another good thing about it, almost all the Arab countries, Sudan is the only country that have allowed these people to be citizens of Sudan. They have been accepted, and they have been assimilated in the country. But they know that they are Nigerians, they speak Hausa, they have a lot of relations in Nigeria, and if there is serious conflict in that area, then don't be surprised if we start having hundreds of thousands of refugees in this country. And I don't think this is something that we look forward to.
So the Sudan case now, what can be the way out? It seems to be a stalemate between the initial civil society groups that worked with the military to remove, after the protest started, to remove Bashar. But now they have taken over. And then there are accusations that even the coup now, the recent one, that they removed that they did that on behalf of Bashar al-Assad. What's really going on?
Well, it's a very complex, situation also. Very, very complex. We hope that the Sudanese will find a way of resolving their problem. You can see that there's a lot of international implication. There are a lot of international influence in it. Even even Egypt, is involved. United Arab Emirates is involved, and then you have the Western, countries. Sudan is a big country, and as I've said, we have very close relationship with Sudan, with millions of Nigerians in that place. The instability, political instability in Sudan had gone for a very, very long period. And I think the Sudanese are trying to find a way of resolving their own problem themselves. We hope they succeed in doing that. Because
so, at the level of Sudan and Chad, since they are outside of ECOWAS, but they are still within the African Union, so what role can the African Union play in, in promoting democracy, or at least in rolling back these coups, if that is the goal in the first place?
Well, it's the same thing the AU is doing in almost every, country. The AU is interested in having good governance. The AU is interested in having peace, in these countries. And AU is taking up this with the government of Sudan, and is doing it in collaboration with the United Nations to make sure that peace and stability returns, to Sudan. It's not just in Sudan. We have Libya. This is also another complex, case.
But Libya's case is not the same as a coup. They have not had a coup.
As I mentioned to you before, that the 3 traditional reasons, for coup, now there is the 4th one. That is insecurity, insurgency. At the moment, there are over 17 countries in Africa where there is insurgency, where there have been demand for separatist, movements, including Nigeria, including, Cameroon.
17 countries?
17 countries in Africa. Ghana had this problem, Sudan had this problem, Nigeria had this problem, even Chad had this problem. So this is also a very serious problem. It's not just military coup. The separatist, demand, separatist movement, secessionist demand are equally very serious problems in Africa. And this we have to go back probably to the Berlin Conference, 1884. And it's just like inevitability of instability in Africa. No matter how you look at it, there will always be some kind of instability in Africa. Not because of our own doing, but the situation we have found ourselves. And we have to find a way out of this, problems. Africa cannot continue, because once you have political instability, then development, it becomes, a problem.
Thank you very much. So maybe we'll be transiting to that issue of development, but that development in Africa between the early 2000s, the 2 decades of democracy to date, and look at how that may have caused this coups. But before then, we'll be taking just a moment break. Thank you, viewers, for staying with us. So far, we've been talking about the advent and the resurgence of coups in West Africa, but also in other countries within Africa. I'm talking to Ambassador Muhammad Coups Ibrahim, who was for more than 33 years a career diplomat serving in many countries. When we return, we'll continue that discussion with him. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is Daily Politics on Trust TV. If you are just joining us, you can also follow our discussions on all our social media platforms on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Before we went on that short break, we were talking about the resurgence of coups in Africa with Ambassador Muhammad Coups Ibrahim. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
Your Excellency. Now, the part of the reasons that many analysts in newspapers, in television programs have, is that the democratic dividends, the dividends of democracy have not been anywhere near satisfactory levels in Africa. For example, in all these countries where you have had coups, the unemployment levels, the poverty levels are in the region of 38 to 42, 43% in all of these countries, And then the unemployment level in some of these countries, particularly among the youth, even higher than those figures. So young people are frustrated. There are no economic opportunities or no opportunities for economic advancement, and so on. Are these not the conditions that gave rise to the coups in the 70s and 60s all over again?
Well, they are part of the conditions.
Okay.
But it's not only in Africa that we have problem of unemployment. It's a global problem, especially in the era of the pandemic. There's hardly any country now, even China, that their economic progress has not been disrupted by the pandemic and other events in the last 2 years. Sometimes we are too much in a hurry. If you look at the history of other countries, they had to go through several decades. It's kind of a cyclic, thing. There is up and down in the history of every
Some people
country.
will say Africa is the only continent now that is left, that has not been lifted, where hundreds of millions of people have not been lifted in poverty. In Asia, you've seen the rise of the Asian tigers, and now China and Vietnam. In the Middle East, you've seen countries like UAE and so on, all coming up. But in Africa, there are no success stories to point to of a significant sort. Some people would say that's part of the source of frustration.
Well, that's true, but we are so much in a hurry.
Okay.
Most of these countries that you are talking about have a history of 200, 300 years. I've just mentioned the Berlin Conference, where Africa has been carved out into many countries. And that is affecting our progress. I don't know what we can do about it, but it's an issue. It's an ongoing, it's a continuous problem for us. Take, for example, Chad that we have just mentioned. Probably apart from North Korea, there is no country that I know in the world that it has no road connection, it has no air connection, it has no sea connection with its immediate neighboring country. How do you go to Chad from here?
It takes...
You have to go through Cameroon.
4 days, yes.
You have to go through Cameroon from Nigeria. This is our neighbor.
Even through Ethiopia.
Chadians have been complaining for a long time. They come to Kano to buy things, except if they are going by air. They have to go through Cameroon. And the Cameroonian levy heavy tax of them. The Lake Chad that used to be, probably we call it the barrier, is no longer the kind of barrier. It has shrunk, by more than 70%. Where it used to be sea before, now is ordinary sand. So if you want to build bridge, you could easily do that so that you have direct contact between Chad, and Nigeria. Even in ECOWAS, we don't have a common currency which will facilitate trade. There are about 6 different currencies in ECOWAS, a country, a union of 15 countries. We have been talking about the common currency, the ECO, for over 30 years. We have not succeeded, in doing that. The EU is the model for a union anywhere in the world. The first thing they did when they became a union in 1992 was to have a common currency, the euro. Even though most of them had currencies of international value. The Dutch mark, the pound sterling, the French franc in those days. They were international currencies. But they were not satisfied. They had to move a step further, knowing the importance of having a common currency in your trade, intra-trade, and development. We have not succeeded in doing that. We have been mentioned.
Some people are saying the reason why we have not succeeded is precisely because France doesn't want that for West Africa.
But for how long?
Because the other African countries that are francophone within West Africa will have some, their lapels are tied to France in many ways, to the French.
You can eat your cake and have it back again.
Okay.
The French-speaking countries are already demonstrating. Even Niger, there are a lot of people that are demonstrating that they can't see any benefit, of having the kind of relationship they are having with France. We have just mentioned Mali. We have seen in Burkina Faso. Probably just 1 or 2 of the francophone countries are still tied, to France. We know they have signed this pact, that is forcing them to have their keep their money, keep their reserve in the French central bank. But that should not continue. If we are really serious, we can do something, about it. But then, it's not just good enough to talk about France. We have the Anglophone countries, about 5. Where can't we start?
These 5, Ghana, Nigeria, Liberia, Sierra Leone.
Why don't we start with our own currency? And then if they see, then they can join us. One of the problems, with ECOWAS and indeed even the AU, if you compare to the EU that I say is the model, when you form a union or an association without defining the values, and the values are that you must accept certain conditions. You must subscribe to a common currency, for example. You must subscribe to democracy and good governance. You must subscribe to all what you intend to make this union move forward. We have never had that. People are just jumping in without defining their goals and objectives. It's now that we are trying to define these goals and objectives, and we are going in different directions. But there's no doubt that common currency is very important. Africa has now made some kind of progress by the coming out with the common, the African common, market.
Yes.
The continental free trade area. The continental free trade area. It's a huge development. We want to see this in action.
But how can it work if there is no infrastructure? For example, African countries are connected by each other by limited roads, by limited rail lines, by limited even water connection. Because even though you have a coast that connects almost 5 West African countries together, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Ghana, and so on. That connectivity is still poor. It's mostly cargo. And then even by air travel, sometimes some people, when they are going from Niger Republic, from Nigeria here, from Niger Republic, which has a border with many states in Nigeria, you will have to it takes you 24 hours by air to get there, because maybe you will have had to land in 2 or 3 other countries.
Do you know what will bring this infrastructure?
Yes.
That's one thing good, with the free market economy. If you know you are going to make profit, if you know that by trading with Niger, your business will experience a lot of improvement, there will be huge profit for you. You will start thinking, what do we do? Someone like Dangote, for example, you can see he's breaking barriers with all the difficulties. We should start thinking of doing that.
There was an interview in which he was saying that where he gets cement from by Jana or somewhere that he gets one of his cement factories. It's just about 28 miles from Benin Republic. And yet he cannot export cement into Benin Republic, because Benin Republic, they prefer to export from China.
Yeah, with the continental free trade area, this will all be an issue of
eliminated.
The past.
Okay.
So this is a huge development. This is what we hope the free trade area will resolve some of these problems.
Thank you. But then to go back to our coup issues, how equipped, or rather well-equipped, are military governments in dealing with these challenges, both at the continental, subcontinental, but also even individual country levels? How, for example, in Mali or in Burkina Faso particularly, and in Guinea, how is the military governments that they now have, how well equipped are they to deal with the expectations of these young people after a few months, to deal with the economic demands of these young people for jobs and opportunities, for incomes and so on? How well equipped is a military
No matter how well equipped a military is, once it's not a democracy, there is always a problem. We say we are just prolonging the evil day. The best system of government anywhere in the world, is democracy.
Okay.
Early in my career, I had lived in the Soviet Union during the communist period. I still have a recollection, of the Soviet, people going to the moon. Yet they are not producing enough soap. They are not producing enough sugar. Basic things are not there. Democracy, human rights, will solve most of these problems, and all these countries that are reversing their democratic, process, they will realize that this is one step, forward and several steps backward, and that's why Nigeria is concerned. We want to move the whole of the sub-region and indeed, Africa. And you cannot do that by having countries with going through coups and instability, whether political or all kinds of things. That it's a setback to them and setback to the region.
So maybe some people feel okay too. That's why the regional bodies, ECOWAS and the AU, maybe they're toothless. They don't have any power. They don't have any capacity. They've been there. ECOWAS, for example, is almost 50 years next year. AU plus the OAU days is even older than that. So why do they lack the capacity to to handle this kind of situations before they lead to coups?
Today, if Liberia, Sierra Leone, are being peaceful and they are making progress and they are democratic, it's because of the contribution of ECOWAS and at the center of it, Nigeria.
Okay.
And there are challenges. There is no country that has no challenges. And life itself is full of challenges, either as individual or as nations. We must be determined to face these challenges, and that's the only way we can move forward. Where you see our people running to Europe, running to these places, the countries that developed the European countries, their own people developed it through blood and sweat and all this and to get it. It didn't come up overnight. The old cliche that Rome was not built in a day is just a reality. We don't seem to appreciate the progress that we are making. When I was in secondary school, from Kano to Kaduna, it used to take a whole day from Kano to Kaduna.
200 kilometers.
Yes. Now you are doing it, barring this recent situation, unfortunate thing. You are doing it in 2 hours. There was only one plane, a day from Kaduna or from Kano, to Lagos. And now you are having 10 flights, a day. We are developing our railways. If it were not for setback that we had, the military coup, the civil war, and other things would have made a lot of progress more than we are doing. Let's look at the future with some hope.
Okay. Thank you. One of the proposals by the ECOWAS is, along the lines of what you mentioned earlier, that they're going to mobilize ECOWAS forces in the mold of the ECOMOG of the past and station them in countries that where democracy is under threat. Countries like the Gambia, like Niger Republic and Guinea-Bissau, where you had coup attempts in recent years. So to what extent can that work? And what would that imply for countries that have successfully done their coups?
I think it is better not to go to that extent.
Okay.
There are ways of fighting military coups and averting them in advance without waiting for them to happen. And that's why we have the ECOWAS protocol on good governance and democracy. The AU also has the African Charter on democracy, election, and governance. These are all with the hope of averting military coups. Education is very, very important. There is lack of political consciousness in a lot of people, including the youth in particular, who think that once the military is there, that will be the end of our problem. The reality,
so do you think they're going to be disappointed? The youths in these countries, are they going to be disappointed?
Of course.
By these military governments?
They may not realize it now, but they will realize not long after that nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. You can't change your country just by having a military coup, except if the military, are coming with something that is not there, would come and mobilize people to put their base, but it still comes to the same thing. You must make sacrifice. Whether it's military or civilian government, you must make sacrifice. But the world is not a matter of argument now. There's no substitute to democracy. There's none at all. I kept telling you that I was in Libya for 4 years. In spite of all the propaganda of Gaddafi, there is freedom, there is this, which is not true.
It's not true.
No, that's not true. But now, without even the semblance, of the little organized, administration that Gaddafi had, which wasn't, a democracy, even the absence of that one, is telling on the country. So you can imagine, if they had a democracy, and you take it all of a sudden like that, you will never realize what you are missing until it's no longer there.
Interesting.
The freedom of expression that we have, the freedom that you can move from one place to the other to start your business, the freedom we have our children now going anywhere in the country.
So is there a way of saying that Nigeria coups are not, a coup is unlikely in Nigeria anytime soon? Are the conditions there that we will also be having a coup like other countries near us and far away from us?
I think we are going into a dangerous ground.
Okay.
But I will tell you quite honestly that Nigeria is not Burkina Faso, Nigeria is not Mali, and I'm sure the military, they know it themselves. They know it.
Thank you very much. They will not play with fire. Is that what you're saying, sir? Yeah. Thank you very much, Ambassador Mahmoud Kau, for Ibrahim, for coming on to the show. It's really been nice, thank you, talking to you. Thank you very much also our viewers for being with us all through today. We hope that tomorrow you join us again for another edition of the, Daily Politics. I am Suleiman. Good night.
Thank you.